Welcome back for another episode of the Vitamin C's podcast, proud part of the CLNS Media Network. I am your host, Tim Sheils, and I'm joined by my co-host and partner in crime, Wayne Breezie Brown. It's been a little bit, had some life stuff going on, but it is good to be back in the seat and getting back behind the mic. Before we crack into things, Wayne, how are we doing today, man?
I'm doing good. Life's good. And it's good to get back to Celtics talk. You know, there's a lot of things not going on, but on the bright side, I would say that, our draft pick, he's looking pretty darn decent. And there's a
Yeah.
possibility he can probably find a way to crack some playing time in this roster. So I'm excited for him. I really am.
Yeah, Jordan Walsh looked pretty damn good in the Summer League play that I've been able to see. And I think it's awesome that they were able to find a guy like in the second round that's able to do all of the things that he can do. And he's still so young. I mean, he hasn't even turned 20 yet. Still got plenty of time to build upon his game, build up on his frame. Obviously, he's he's in like good shape. He's like ripped, but he's very wiry. So I'm sure they're going to want him to bulk up at some point, but I don't know how much is going to happen before this season or anything like that. That's kind of like a year 2 sort of thing. And also like men usually actually stop growing up until like maybe like age 22. So your body isn't actually done filling out until around then. So it'll be interesting to see how he fits into their plans. But I mean, considering where the wing depth is on this team, I definitely think he could factor in, especially with just the way he was playing. Just like overall, seems like a very high IQ guy, plays high energy, gets out and runs, is not afraid to shoot the three. And that three ball looked a lot better for the most part than what he was advertised in terms of his like draft and stuff. Like he had a pretty smooth stroke and he looked confident taking those looks. So I mean, it's exciting to at least have somebody from the second round because, I mean, you got Jay Scrubb, right? You got Jay Scrubb on the two-way deal. Yep. So, like, that's cool. J.D. Davison looks like a raw prospect still. Like, he needs some work, and that's fine. Like, that's kind of what you expected there. But you got one more two-way contract still open. I think Yam Madar is staying overseas because I think he signed a new deal with Fenerbahce. And I mean, if that's the case, then who knows? You know, it'll be interesting to see if they do anything else with that final one because the new CBA, you used to just have two-way contracts. Now you got 3. I wouldn't be surprised if they looked at Giles because Tatum is boys with him. And they also tried to change the ruling. So like Tatum was actually really vocal about guys who like, and this is included in the new CBA, right? So if guys end up getting hurt and missing time, like where they miss like part of a season, it lengthens the amount of eligibility you have for two-way contracts, which means that Giles can sign to one now. It'll be his last one, but it made it possible because he lost so much time to injury. But besides that, I think the big thing when it comes to the Celtics is this Jaylen Brown stuff. It's almost like no news being just what it is. Like there's news about there not being news, you know?
Right. I mean, it's definitely the question mark. I feel like, if I had to characterize the Jaylen Brown story, it's kind of like the Riddler. It's like he wants to be here. The Celtics want him here. And now they still haven't gotten it done yet. And so, like, the question is, well, what's the holdup? Like, what's going on? And so, you gotta kind of think it's got to be something with the language. I don't necessarily think it's the monetary value, the money, but it has to do with some type of incentives, some type of options. So it has to do with the language of the contract. And now Jaylen Brown's across seas, and so they're not even going to continue to pick this up until he returns back home. So we'll be waiting a tad bit longer for the Jaylen Brown saga. So let's kind of break that down. And there are some scenarios and situations the Celtics may be trying to keep open. I mean, Dame Lillard still wants to be traded, and things like that. And I saw this crazy rumor that he got traded to the Heat. I almost fell for the clickbait, and I was like, "You got to be kidding me!" And then James Harden getting traded to the Heat as well. I'm like, whoa, that would be a serious, scary ass team of old players that still have some juice in their tank. But as far as Jaylen Brown, I'm hoping and praying the Celtics and Jaylen Brown find a way to come together to get it done because, there was an interesting stat that I saw about Jaylen Brown as far as him finishing and getting to the rim and finishing at the rim. And it's phenomenal. And I don't want to let that go. I'm not ready to move on from Jaylen Brown. And you saw how he's improved in his three-point shooting. He might have took a slight dip in his defense as far as his ball handling. I don't think he ever was great at that, and hopefully maybe he's overseas learning how to play. Sorry, Brown, just trying to factor that in. But I don't know. But I do feel like he makes the Celtics a better overall team, and his addition to this team, we need him. So that's how I feel.
Yeah, and I think this iteration of the team right now is currently constituted. You need him to be here. And it's always come back to the point of if you're going to move on from Jaylen Brown, you're probably going to have to do it this summer because you're not going to be able to do it next summer. You don't want to wait till the trade deadline. So if you're going to make that move, you got to make it sooner rather than later. And I think if they don't come into an agreement, that's the situation that it's going to be. But all of the reports seem to indicate that it's like they're in no rush and there's certain, details and stuff like that. Like, I wonder if part of it's, fully guaranteeing money, like incentive lace stuff where it's like you need to play X amount of games or you need to, make the All-Star game or you need to, have X amount of turnovers or don't pass like a certain threshold in turnovers in order to, guarantee that money. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's just some stuff getting wrinkled, little wrinkles in the deal that are kind of throwing things for a loop. But if you're the Celtics, and I mean, as much as you need to lock this guy up long term, you also have to think about this, this second tax apron. And it could be an order of operations things, right? Like they don't want to shut the door on any other potential trade opportunities that might come up. You're looking up north at the Raptors. Maybe the Raptors are looking to move on from someone like Siakam or OG Anunoby, who's looking for more of a playmaking role, reportedly. So, maybe there's something there. And we'll touch upon it too, but like Joel Embiid's comments are freaking weird. In looking at specifically James Harden, maybe he's going to LA to the Clippers. So that's a big one that's coming down. But, there's a lot of moving parts, especially with Dame Lillard not being traded yet. And it feels like ever since that point, I keep going back to it, but it feels like everything else has kind of been on hold. But there was one piece from Adam Himmelsbach for the Boston Globe talking about this. And here's an excerpt out of it. 2 weeks have passed without a deal, with seemingly everyone other than the involved parties wondering why negotiations seem to be moving slowly. Now it appears the process will be delayed at least a bit more. According to a league source, although talks between Brown and the Celtics have been progressing, Brown, an NBPA association, NBP, the National Basketball Players Association vice president, is headed overseas for an organizational event, and he plans to meet with the Celtics again when he returns. Jumping back down a little bit, there were signs that Brown's extension could be finalized in Las Vegas this week. Boston executives were here for the Summer League, and Brown was here for several days, spending part of the time operating a gift suite for rookies at the Palm Casino Resort. Brown's brother, Quentin, even sat courtside with Celtics decision makers during the team's loss to the Wizard Sunday. So this was 2 weeks ago. So family was there. He was in Vegas. There was clearly some conversations going on. This report came back, I believe this dropped on the 13th of July. So it's been not a week, but almost a week since that dropped. And now we have to wait for Jaylen Brown to come back. I don't know.
I just feel like it's going to get done when the timing is right. And here's the thing. This deal doesn't have to get done anytime soon. The Celtics have time. Brown has time. He knows he has time. We want it done so we can continue to move forward and know how to build. And I think for the team's sake, the players, I'm sure they probably want to get it done so that they can, continue to build and move forward. But at the end of the day, both parties got to come to an agreement. That's how these things work. And until they do, we just gonna kind of have to sit back, relax, and hope something gets done. At the end of the day, though, I will say this: I really feel like Brad is whatever happens, like he has a plan.
Yeah, to pivot if he needed to.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Like if it didn't go in the favor of Brown being here, I'm sure he has there's a plan. There's a plan already in place. So there's a plan A, Brown, plan B. There's probably even a plan C. It's just going to be really hard to move on from an all NBA player. It's going to be really hard for me to accept a plan B or a plan C, but I'm gonna continue to find a way to trust Brad. But again, I want to make sure and make it clear. My take is I believe that Jaylen Brown will be a Boston Celtic for the next several years.
Yeah, and I think there's still a chance that they do come to an agreement, and then maybe somewhere down the line he ends up getting moved on from. I don't think it's a situation where they don't want to keep him around or anything like that. I think it's just a matter of how these things kind of unfold. By all accounts and reports, they've been pretty vocal about wanting to keep Jaylen Brown. Brad Stevens has gone on the record saying, that is our goal. We love Jaylen. We want to keep him part of the organization moving forward. So like all of that talk is going on, and they have to just wait until this thing unfolds fully. But these talks are going to continue to go through the rest of this summer until it finally comes to fruition. It just means that there's a lot of other stuff that's moving parts. And I think the real reason why I feel so strongly about getting the deal done as soon as possible is you can turn your attention to the rest of the roster and figuring out where things need to go. Even if it's a situation where like, hey, they've come to an agreement, they also do things where they'll come to an agreement on a contract, right? And they'll do like an order of operations thing where it's like, okay, we've come to terms. We're going to sign this deal after we go ahead and we get these couple guys signed, and then we'll go ahead and sign you to the deal. Because sometimes there's like a salary cap thing. To be honest, though, with his situation, he's already under contract. So I don't know how much that could be impacting his situation because they already have him inked for one more season. I just don't want to have the distraction going into what could be a very, very important season, especially if he's not on the books beyond 2024.
Yeah, like I said, he'll be with us for the immediate future when they sign, as far as what may happen down the road, But this is part of the language that I'm talking about. There could be one of those player options where
he might want a player option that lines up with Tatum's.
See what I'm saying?
That's, I think, a big thing. There was a snippet in one of the articles saying he believes that he's on the same tier as Jason Tatum. And
well, let's not put that out there because I don't want to put that in the atmosphere to where when they watch and listen to this show, you already know where I'm going with this.
It's Tatum. I'm sorry. It's Tatum. Tatum's the better player.
Yes.
They're close. They're close, but
they
not
are close.
In the same tier. By literally definition, they are close, but not close. Because one guy was first team All NBA, and one guy was second team.
There you go.
That's okay.
Tim.
You're still like an All NBA talent. It's just there's a guy who has a step above you. The way that I also would look at it is if in Game 7 against Miami, if it were Brown that got hurt instead of Tatum, I think they would have had a better chance to win that game.
Only because if Tatum has the ability to make plays
and to take over a game. Especially in the game. We've seen him in Game 7, man. He kept them alive against Philly. He kept them alive against Philly.
You know what? I take that back. He does have the ability to do it. He just doesn't always do it. I think that's where I'm going with it. He's not consistent with the takeover, the Mamba spirit. Like, I need him to be full new color Mamba. We don't want the black Mamba. We don't want the white Mamba. We need the green Mamba. That's what we need. We need different type, the original color of a snake. We need a different type of Mamba out of Jason Tatum. And I think that's the next level of his game. I know we're talking about Brown, but I think that's the next level of Tatum's game. Just having the killer, whatever, give me the ball, type guy.
I get you. One other thing that's worth noting, and it's something that happened within the last 24 to 48 hours, a little video came out about Joel Embiid and answering some questions. And one of the big things that he talked about was, his future in Philadelphia and what that potentially means moving forward for Philly. I mean, it was not great. I'm looking for the exact quote, so I have it up. And what he ended up saying on a microphone, talking about winning a championship, wanting to win a championship, his desire to get there. And I quote, "I just want to win a championship. Whatever it takes, I don't know where that's going to be, whether it's in Philly or somewhere else. I just want to have a chance."
that's the quote that I read.
Huge. That is a massive.
But
Like that is.
but we talked this up. We've been talking this up from the jump. Remember, we were like, are they gonna keep Harden?
Yeah, if they blow it up, Embiid might want out, and that's what it's looking like. I mean, Harden having interest in going to the Clippers. I don't know if there's interest from the Clippers in Harden. I'm assuming there is, but I just don't know to what degree. And, apparently at one point the Clippers tried to pursue a deal involving Harden and Tobias Harris. But I don't know if that's going to happen, if that's in the cards. What's the money moving around there? I don't know. I just find it very interesting that Joel Embiid's coming out and saying that stuff. And I don't know what that means long term for what's going on in Philly. Does he move on now? Does he move on next year? Like, it's a big piece.
I don't know. But I know he's getting older. He's gotten all the personal accolades you can get. He's now the MVP, the current MVP of the league. And to not to cap off his career or anything, because he still has plenty of career left, but he wants to contest for a title. And it just doesn't seem like in Philly, as long as Boston stays assembled, they will never beat Boston. I just don't feel like that's a team that they can beat in the playoffs.
It's a mental thing.
It's a freaking mental thing. And when you own someone mentally, the amount of nerves, the amount of like it's hard. It's hard to overcome that. And so maybe he wants out. I don't know how they're going to be able to trade him in that contract and things like that. I don't know if the Celtics would be a contestant to get Joel Embiid, but that might be the one thing that the Celtics need to look into. I know we've seen some star players. There's Lillard out there, Harden's out there. There's some stars still available. But I know we signed Porzingis. I understand that. But now we're talking about Joel Embiid, and if he happens to want to become available, do you find a way to make something like this happen? I would trade several first-round picks and whatever, and I'm sure they're going to want a player. But if they're blowing stuff up, they're not going to be looking for a big player in return. Right?
It depends. It depends on how much they're actually retooling and what that looks like. For me, I think if the Celtics, I think Embiid, if he demands out, one of the prime destinations he's going to name is going to be the Boston Celtics. That is my belief. I think the relationship between Tatum and Embiid is actually really good. They've got the same trainer in Drew Hanlon. So they work out in the offseason together all the time. There's been so many clips of them playing in the gym together during off time. And I think that factors into any kind of move for him. And if you look at his track record, look at the one team that's always been consistently in their way to win, and it's been the Celtics. And, they've managed to get over that hump, and they're looking to try and get back there again and get to the finals and have a chance to win a championship. And I think for Embiid specifically, because of the opportunities they've got there in Boston, you win a championship in Boston, you're immortalized forever. Forever. Like, there's not going to be a single, restaurant or bar in town that's not going to know who you are. And that's like you're up there in the upper echelon of like gods among men in terms of sports. Like, people know who you are. It's like Mike Napoli levels of like walking around the street, like crushing beers, following the World Series levels of like God. And I think, if push comes to shove, and I'll put this to you and see what you think, would you trade Jaylen Brown for Joel Embiid? It's not going to just be Jaylen Brown, but it'd be like picks and other assets. Would you do it?
I think yeah. I know I said that way too fast, right? Because I
don't think so at all. I don't think that's too fast.
I know I just stated earlier that we need Jaylen Brown and his ability and things like that. But now you're adding arguably the best center in the game. It's arguable because Jokic is still
Jokic is just so goddamn good.
yeah. And I know he wasn't MVP. I know Embiid finished with the MVP, but I mean, the Celtics haven't had a center since
since KG to
K-
really have that level
and
of
he
dominance.
wasn't necessarily a center either, right? Like he was just a bigger, powerful. Like you get what I'm saying? So like, but as far as his dominance, as far as his ability to play the 4 and play the 5 and line up with the bigger guys and things like that, like and he just had the defensive mind. It was like he knew how to defend the bigs and stuff like that. Now you get Embiid. The only thing about Embiid you're gonna have to kind of monitor, which I feel like the Celtics have monitored injuries a lot better this past season. Might have been the best.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's the only question mark, honestly. Other than that, you're gonna get a 30+ point scorer a night. You're gonna get a double-digit rebounder a night. You're gonna get your threes. He's gonna take his 4 to 5 threes, and if he hits half of them, you're Gucci, right?
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, like, how do you not do that? How do you?
I think it's
why do you not do that?
You worry about fit, if anything. Like, there's not an issue between Tatum and Embiid fitting. Like, that would be nasty. The pick and pop action would be gross with that.
I hit you with the bells because I didn't know they used the same trainer. So
yeah, Drew Hanlon. Yeah, there's a ton of videos of them shooting around in the gym and talking smack to each other. It's pretty cool.
Love it.
Yeah, and the thing with Embiid potentially coming to Boston, if there were ever the opportunity there, you'd have to look at that fit with Porzingis and how that would be. I mean, I think that you could make it work. I just know that like him and Al Horford couldn't work, but I also think that Al Horford at the point in his career is so much different than what Porzingis is in his career right now. And I also think Porzingis is just such a lights out shooter for a man his size, and his game is just also matured. So I think it would be a lot different in terms of how that would mesh.
I don't know, Tim. I think it works.
I think it'll work. I just don't know.
It'll take time for it to.
Yeah, but I mean, they were. I mean, well, because you're talking about bringing in 2 brand new star level talents, and you're talking about star level talents, and trying to mesh it all out, and see what happens. So I'm interested to see what happens with that, because it's just such a. It's such an interesting question to wonder if that's why there's been so much hesitation by the Celtics to get a deal.
They heard from a little big bird or something.
Yeah, exactly. Like, we're waiting for these other shoes to fall, and like we'll see what happens. And like we'll work on this negotiation on this deal, but like, we've got you under contract. We want to keep you here. And then something else, ends up happening. I mean, the only reason I think that is because the Dame Lillard stuff has kind of just held up the entire NBA market. We've seen some really small moves here and there now since then, and guys who would be staying with their respective teams getting their extensions. But it just feels like the NBA is kind of like holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. And I feel like once it does, there's just going to be a flurry of other moves, because nobody wants to be the team that jumps the gun and misses out on an opportunity to land a talent like that.
Damn, Dame.
Just interesting. Yeah, Dame kind of screwed up the whole market. It's like when Minnesota traded for Rudy Gobert and ruined the trade market for a little bit, where they gave up so many picks for a guy who now you have to wonder how that team's going to fit too. And that's also why like I have some hesitation with trying to trade for it. And you can't trade Porzingis for him. No. If you were to ever consider going for Embiid, not right now because of that extension. So you have to wait a certain amount of time. Yep. Yeah. Hey, so it's a whole thing.
So interesting that we're talking about this. There was a Rob Williams story that dropped a couple of days ago about how he's looking really good. Like this is the healthiest he's ever been.
He's shooting in the gym too. He's doing shooting drills.
Wait a minute. Yeah. So, in Philly, Brown, maybe Rob Williams, package a first round pick or 2, whatever. Would you move on? Would that get it done? Because I would still do it because you don't want to have a logjam at the bigs. You keep Al Horford because he's your veteran and he took the big pay cut and he's only going to cost you like $10 million. And so you keep Al, right? And so then you can still rotate. Now, Al can rotate between the 4 and the 5. This is good. That's the versatility we're talking about. So you don't have to have a logjam at that 5 position because Embiid is starting at the 5. And so then when do you bring in Porzingis? Can he play the 4? For sure. But Al can also start at the 4. So now they can flip-flop. And then you're also trying to keep these big guys healthy. I don't know, man. I want to know what would get something like that done. Because
for what it's worth, money-wise, Joel Embiid for Jaylen Brown and Robert Williams works as of right now.
Damn, I'm smart. Woo! On my first crack.
Hey, man, like, from a Celtics perspective, I understand. And I just overall NBA, like you're talking about an MVP. You're talking about the reigning MVP. And whether you think he should have earned it over Jokic or not, he's still an MVP caliber player. He's still going to finish top. He's still, regardless of whether he got it or not, he's finished like top 3 in MVP voting for multiple seasons now. You don't just pick those guys up off, the street. Like, it's just not common to see this level of talent. And, for all the issues, health concerns, whatever have you with Embiid, I still think that in the right situation with the right team around him and the right coach, he absolutely can win a championship. I think Philly's got some issues that they've got to figure out, and they've had issues for a long time, dating back to choosing, keeping Brett Brown and keeping Ben Simmons and keeping Tobias Harris and so many draft picks that just didn't pan out. And now you're kind of in the situation where you finally have this all-star level franchise player, and now it seems like he's not happy. I don't know. If the shoe were on the other foot and this was happening with Boston, I would be genuinely concerned. Concerned.
So from a Philly perspective, and we're not Philly fans, but from a Philly's perspective, they are concerned. Obviously.
They should be.
And they should be because not only, I think they're okay with moving on from Harden, but to lose their franchise, to lose the face of Philadelphia basketball, he's probably it's probably Dr. J and then Joel Embiid and
Allen Iverson.
My bad. So, but
Moses Malone.
But Iverson never won with them, right?
AI never won a championship. I
right.
Don't think
so
at all.
I think I'm going from that perspective, and neither has Embiid, but he's up there. He's up there, and the Mount Rushmore to me of the Philadelphia 76er players.
He should. It's the first time he's their first MVP in a long time. I think AI won an MVP when he was with them.
Yeah.
So he might have been the first MVP for Philly since AI. It's not easy winning MVP, man. Like, you look at some of the franchises, and like last time the Celtics had a player that was in that conversation, So it's
because you have to be the most consistent player on the court. And let me add to that. You have to be available and you have to be consistent.
And you got to make your teammates better.
And you got to find a way to make your teammate. This is why we're a great team. You just answered you completed my sentence.
I'm not trying to cut you up. I'm sorry.
No, that was a completion. That was a perfect completion. It's like I set you up for the alley-oop and you Scottie Pippen did or Michael Jordan did or whatever. But
yeah, LeBron to Wade.
At the end of the day, look, I think for the Celtics, when I think about our team, my goal is like, oh, okay, well, how can we get better, and how can we win? And so you got to look at what's available. You got to look what you got in the bank. You got to pay attention to the daggone rules and all that those different types of things, and try to finagle ways and things like that to make stuff happen. And the curveballs are when like these players demand trades or they become available, and you're like, shoot. Like, you know what I'm saying? So that's what makes basketball like so interesting, especially right now. And if Embiid demands a trade, you want to talk about pause? Like, Lillard will get pushed down No disrespect. And then everything will be about Embiid. This is bad.
Yeah.
This is the NBA, bro. Like,
And you're talking the MVP asking
you're
for a
talking
trade.
MVP asking for a trade.
That's a big deal. It's a
Pay
very
attention
big
to the
deal.
stories. At the end of the day, though, I want Brown. I want my Brown. But
if Joel Embiid asks out and names Boston as a destination, that changes everything. And I honestly, here's my final thought before we wrap up. If it doesn't happen now, I think it happens next offseason. And I think that's why when you look at Porzingis' deal, like if things work out or don't work out, you would move him in any situation. But if it happens now, then you have to consider moving on from Brown if it's possible to make that, or if it's possible to make it happen without Brown. But I don't see that happening. It's insane to expect that to happen.
It wouldn't make sense for the Sixers.
And financially, it just would be a whole mess. There'd be a whole litany of things to figure out. But I mean, if they moved on, you'd have to see what they got back from the Clippers too. Like if they got back Paul George, and then you've got Tyrese Maxey, and then you move on from Embiid, you end up with, let's say, Jaylen and Rob. That's not bad starting point. Like that's a team that will make some noise. And if Maxey can take a leap, take on a bigger role,
which you kind of started to see him, games 2, 3, like take on bigger roles.
That steal against Brogdon was huge.
Oh, come on, it was huge.
Yeah. But, it's either way, the situation is worth monitoring. And
it's worth
right now,
even
in a dead point in the season right now, it's still worth talking about just because, hey, it's just a reminder at a moment's notice, the NBA can just completely turn on its head. So
Thanos snap.
Yes, sir. So with that, we're going to wrap up for today. Thank you for listening for another episode of the Vitamin C's podcast, part of the CLNS Media Network. And please leave likes, comments, subscribe, and we'll catch you next time. So cheers.
The CLNS Media Network is powered by FanDuel. Sign up at FanDuel.com/Boston and get in on the action with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed.